Spirit Switchboard, airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3, New Orleans. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Spirit Switchboard. I am your host, Kerrilynn, and you are listening to us on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 New Orleans. On today's show, we have David Barreto. He is a writer and a researcher on spiritual subjects. He has studied astrophysics through the Australian National University and religious literacy through Harvard University. He is the author of Supernatural Science, and the book we'll be discussing today, which I'm quite excited about, Karma and Reincarnation in the Animal Kingdom, the Spiritual Origin of the Species. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you so much, Kerrilynn, for having me. I'm so excited. I can't wait for our chat. And I think that we're going to produce a lot of good information here. We're going to talk, we're going to debate. And yeah, I can't wait for everything.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about the debate, but I wanted to tell you that I did read the book, and I had a couple of personal wow moments through it in having a different perspective, and maybe about compassion. I would say compassion is where I had some wow moments in personal self-reflection when I was reading the book.
Yeah,
which is good, right? You want everyone to come away with something. And there's so much in it. There's so much to unpack in that book. And I find I'm not very good. I'm not a person that can borrow books because I will highlight and write notes and sticky tabs in them. I love books to death. So
yes, yeah, they're my babies.
Right. And I'm processing and learning and you can see that all inside the book. So I'm almost embarrassed if somebody wants to borrow a book because they're getting, what I've.
It's personal, isn't it? It's personal.
It's very much. There's some vulnerability when I'm sharing a book, for
Definitely.
sure. But compassion and where that lesson was for me. Is it okay for me to share?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
Where it was okay for me to share was I thought I was a very loving person. I feel like I'm a loving person. I feel like I'm a compassionate person. And then I'm reading through it and I'm like, I think that I am a conditional loving person. Because if you want to talk about certain insects, I'm a no-go. But I will go outside and I will thank the spider for protecting my porch from people. The porch pirates are there and have no problem talking to the spider, but then the mosquito or the cockroach, and I'm like,
Yeah. Kerrilynn, that's so good that you pointed on compassion, because I think that was the reason why I wrote the book. And that's the reason why I came up with the research and with the work for it. When we talk about compassion, right, as not only human beings, but when we are talking about being kinder so we can spiritually progress, right? I think that compassion has to do, when we are talking about compassion, it's all about loving our equals or loving our family members and humans, and all of that compassion that we can see and read on literature and that we can relate to. But then what I am proposing here is that we have to extend our compassion umbrella, right, to other beings. I am not saying that you should at this point consider a mouse as much as you consider your mother, right? Obviously we are in a family and we are humans right now, but what I'm saying is that when we talk about compassion, we can't be selective. You're either compassionate or you are not. So what I'm trying to propose, as I said, is to extend this compassion to all beings and understand that when you extend this compassion is extending back, because above us and below us we have different beings, we have the hierarchy of spirits in the universe. So by extending compassion towards the minor souls, you are also doing that in your own favor, because
Yeah.
this will come back to you. So yeah, that's very important for us to think in that way. I will extend my compassion beyond my family, beyond my neighbors, beyond my um, country, and beyond my species.
And that was when I was reading that, I had a memory from I lived in the middle of nowhere in the country, farming, farming community on a farm. So I knew how our animals were raised and treated, right? But what I was remembering was it was a rainy day. Um, we were on the bus, and one of the people that we were picking up, their mother was holding up the bus because she was collecting all of the earthworms that were on the road, and she would not allow the bus to drive over these earthworms.
Oh,
And so she
wow.
was collecting them. So we had this division on this school bus of elementary school age children. Um, giving this person a hard time about their mom who was out in the rain collecting these up because they didn't care, and the other ones who were caring, and that debate. And I'm 52. So this debate happened a while ago.
Yeah,
And but that memory flashed back up when I was hitting that book about compassion. Her mom was really teaching a whole bus mirroring, and some people got that lesson on the bus and
absolutely.
some didn't.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's about relating to, and relating to, Kerrilynn, I believe, is not putting yourself in their shoes, right? Relating to is, how do I feel about it? Is it right or not? So we can always, whenever we see something, we can always immediately judge, is it good or not? Are they doing something good or not? And the difference between good, Kerrilynn, that something that I
Mhm.
perceived is that good and bad.
Mm. Oh, we just had a little bit of a glitch there. So, oh, we just had a little bit of a glitch. So you might need to repeat that again for us.
Right. Okay. Sorry. So when we talk about what is good and what is bad, right? Because there's this polarity, right? Good and bad. What is
Mhm.
good and bad? I believe that good is when there's no selfishness, and what is bad is when you have selfishness. For example, if I am bad towards you, right? I do something bad to you, it means that I am being selfish because I want to do whatever, or I want to take something from you, or I want to cause something onto you, regardless of what you feel, right?
Right.
So I am doing something regardless, so I will do it. So that's selfish. But when I am not being selfish, I care about what you are feeling or what is happening to you. So that debate that you're talking about, the mother was there teaching, and there was two sides. You can spot the goodness, the sides that was good, not that the other side was bad, but you
Mhm.
could spot that side is not being selfish, the other one might be being a little bit selfish. So that's the difference, I guess, between good and bad. So yeah.
I wanted to, not necessarily that's where I wanted to start the conversation, but I'm glad that we did.
Me too.
Was karma actually that word? Um, I call it stink eye tight butt. It's one of those words that makes me go, you know,
Mm.
only because it gets used, I think, improperly. People toss it around like a buzzword without really understanding what it is. The same as the terms love and light. Like love and light
Mhm.
is another
Oh,
term that kind of gets tossed around without maybe really understanding the intention in which it can or shoulda, coulda, woulda be used. Yeah,
mm,
so maybe we could start our conversation with you talking about exactly what karma or cause and effect, if you can talk about those.
sure. Kerrilynn, I really share this thing with you about the word karma. And I'm so
Mhm.
glad that you mentioned it, because karma sounds a bit heavy, doesn't it? Like, and
Mhm.
sometimes we use or we see karma as something that is nefarious and something that is like a punishment or something
Mhm.
even intricate that we can't understand. What does that mean? You know, what karma is. So let's just talk about what karma is, right? So karma is basically an experience, right? An action that has to occur for you or for any being to amend a past wrongdoing, right? Or a lesson that wasn't learned, then you have to repeat somehow that lesson. So basically, karma is similar to the laws of cause and effect. Now, let me just talk about the laws of cause and effects, because they are very
Okay.
similar to karma, but they're not quite the same, right? So, the laws of cause and effects, they are a natural movement in the universe. And because we all beings are in the universe, in either in the physical universe or in the astral or mental universe, right? We are subjected to that movement. So, for example, if I punch the wall, right? The same pressure that I apply onto the wall will apply onto my hand, right? So this is like a natural movement. If I throw a stone um, in the sea, so that is a movement. You know, I will cause a movement, right, back.
Right.
So it's pretty much natural. The difference between, so when you do something towards anyone in the world, in the universe, that will come back to you. That's the law of cause and effect. However, the law of the karma, as we talk about, you know, for our progress, karma is basically that law, but there's a plan around that law. There's a meticulous plan. You plan, you modify that experience that you have to go through. So when that thing, that experience is coming back, there's a modification. You can modify, you can plan around it. So let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say that in your previous life, you had a child, but then you abandoned the child because you had to live, you know, a life of maybe fun. You were being selfish, maybe. You know, you could have raised the child, but you decided to just go and have a good life. In a next life, your karma means that it's either you choosing it or you are advised to go under that circumstance. In your next life, you can come with that same child, but now the child will be disabled. And now that is a karma. Why? You love the child, and taking care of the child is the most important thing for you. But now you don't have the option. You have to go through that. So before, you would have, in the previous life, you would have to have raised the child. But now you have to compensate, right? So you have to give a lot more. So this is karma. Obviously, we're talking about something quite heavy here, right? Wow, I abandoned a child and now I have to take care of, you know, and there's no escape. So the laws of cause and effect are natural.
Yeah.
Karma, you can kind of modify or change. So, for example, if you in your previous life abandoned the child, right? So you created the imbalance in, you know, in your lives, and then 20 years later, you regret, you can't find the child anymore, but now you start taking care of other children because you feel remorse and you're doing
Right.
so much. See, you are shortening your karma because you are learning the lesson and you are
Right.
doing something good to mitigate that you caused. So now it's not the law of cause and effect, because the effect is going to be diminished, and then we're talking about karma. So you asked me to start talking about karma, and that's the difference I want to put in
Yep.
here,
Yeah.
that for us humans, we are dealing with karma. So we modify, we plan. Animals, we are dealing with cause and effect only, not karma.
And why?
Well, yes. So the main reason is because from insects, right?
Yeah.
In here on planet Earth, I'm talking about planet Earth, but that extends to other planets and other planes. So from insects to humans, we are experiencing something called instinct, right? So obviously, when you
Yeah.
talk about cockroaches, ants, bees, they are all 100% ruled by instincts, right? And then you change the species, right? You go to, let's say, cats and dogs.
Mhm.
They are mostly ruled by instincts, but they are also now developing some sort of emotion towards a species other than their
Mhm.
own. And they are thinking. Their line of thought is shorter than ours, but they are already having short ideas, glimpses of ideas, of thoughts. So, see, they are not commanded 100% by instinct. And you can see this difference in between all the realms. I mean, all of the kingdom, the realms of insects and amphibians and mammals, and it goes like that up to the most complex animals here on Earth, which are elephants and dogs and dolphins and cats and goats and pigs. So remember instinct, right? The more evolved here on planet Earth that you are, the more complex you are, the less instinct you have. The more basic or more primitive you are, the more instinct that individual
Right.
or that insect will be, right? So animals, as they are ruled or commanded mostly by their instincts, they cannot decide what is good and what is bad. Remember that we were talking about
Right.
selfishness. So they can't. So what they are doing is never evil, right? So when a lion, obviously for me, it's really sad to see a lion going after, an animal or something like that. But when they do that, they're not being evil. That's the only thing that they can do because their instincts are telling them to. The instinct, it's an intelligence, but it's an intelligence of the cells, right, of your soul. But it's not thought, it's not intellect, it's not reasoning. So they are not reasoning. So they're not
Right.
deciding on being evil or causing harm or hurt, right? Therefore, they are, because they don't have this reasoning, right? They can't be told, oh, you're doing something bad. However, for us humans, because uh, we still have instincts, right? But because we have so much for our species, right? For this planet, because we have so much intellect and reasoning, we can decide exactly what we are doing when we are in a normal state, right? So I
Right.
can decide if I am being evil or if I'm doing good, if I'm being benevolent, if I'm
Right.
being compassionate. So we can decide. This gives us this responsibility, and that's karma, because we are now deciding on. It's not our instincts. I'll
Right.
give you an example of how instincts play on us, if you allow me.
Of course.
So let's say that what are the basic instincts that we have? I mean, that everyone, all of the animals here on Earth have. It's the instinct of procreation, right? It's the instinct of um, um, keeping themselves keeping alive, collecting food, right?
Right.
So I need to get food, I need to
Survival.
survive, so I need to eat. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they're basics, right? These two, we have those, right? They are now small in comparison to our reasoning. But let me tell you, when you have a regrettable sexual fantasy, right? and you see some, crimes related to sex, for example,
Mhm.
what are they? They are a mix of instinct, right? The desire, the physical senses desire to have sex, but then they mingle with their regrettable thoughts, their regrettable ideas, their reasoning, which is
Right.
distorted. And then see, they are getting something that was just an intelligence of their bodies to procreate to now become a monster, right? So we are using our intellects, and we are sometimes amplifying and modifying these instincts that we still have, right? So see, we are deciding on that. So that's why we have karma. We decide on things. Animals, they don't. So that's why we are in the laws of karma, because we can then fix that, because we decided to do good or harm or not. The animals, they are not deciding.
The
It's an
more,
impulse and they can't control.
so sorry, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, 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 that's at all.
So the more people raising their conscious awareness and becoming, um, choosing more consciously, shifts the collective energy. Is that how you would see that? Like the more that people become consciously aware of how their choices ripple energetically out, um, will make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, if we think in this way, right?
Mhm.
We are here. Remember, I said from insects to humans, what we are doing here, right? Incarnate in this planet here, is that we are trying to get rid of our instincts, right? So that's what we are trying to do. Obviously, we're trying to progress spiritually, and we have to, before we leave this planet to another plane, another consciousness, another dimension, if you may, we can't bring these earthly instincts with us, So from insects to humans, we are doing these, right? We are more advanced in those terms, humans, because we've been there before. The
Yeah.
insects are just starting. So if we understand now that I have to get rid of my instincts, and that's not something bad, what we are doing is, because we are developing reasoning and intellect, and obviously
Mhm.
then compassion and fraternity and all of that, we know that those choices are more important than the instincts, the remains of instincts that we still have, right? So
Right.
it's about choosing and making an effort. So obviously, it's not easy, but that's how we progress. So if we discarnate now, right, we die now, we're going to see ourselves in the astral plane on the same terms of what we are now. We're not going to become angels just because we discarded our physical bodies, and we're not going to become demons. We are just like experiencing the same thing, the same emotions. So if I
Yeah.
had an addiction, I'll still have an addiction there. Not necessarily that I will
Yeah.
take things in there, right? But I might just become an obsessor of someone who still takes. But anyways, that's another conversation. What
Yeah.
I'm saying is,
I agree.
once you are
Yeah.
there in the other plane, you are still carrying with you all of those, all of the junk that you were doing here on earth, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying, when we choose consciously to be in good, to being compassionate, and to choose not the way towards instinct, but the way towards reasoning, and reasoning encompasses compassion, right?
Mhm.
Reasoning is not about like this oh, I have books, and I read a lot, and I'm quite well read and educated. No, it has to do with compassion,
Yeah.
because there are some points in our lives, not necessarily on these planets, that we start knowing so much that we understand that love is actual, not just a cute thing that we are talking about on earth. Love is actually expansion and
Mhm.
connection. So that's I think I don't know if I made it much clearer, or
Yeah,
much.
no, I think you did a great job. Thank you. And
Yeah.
I agree with you. And you can tell, um, I say this all the time: thoughts, words, your deeds, and actions all need to be in alignment. And you can say something but not feel it, and or not put the action in behind something, and it will feel off. And if you are a sensitive person, you can feel when people's when they're out of alignment, when it's not there. Like,
Yeah,
and that
definitely.
mm, our thoughts are also energy, and our thoughts are going to come first, right? I know that
Absolutely.
I've talked about this with clients, and how I've raised my children too, right? We all can have a negative thought that will come up, but I'm like this: clear, cancel, and delete that. Thank you very much. We're just going to clear,
Yeah,
cancel, and delete it. Thank you
definitely.
very much. And then why
1000%.
did it come out that way? And now I need to think about why and how can I do this differently, right?
Great. That's great. Yeah. I think I kind of do the same a little bit, it's
Yeah.
trying to replace what is there,
Yeah.
right? Replace or, make an effort. It's not about faking it. It's
No.
about choosing,
Yeah.
right? You,
Yeah.
there's a phrase that I really like, which is your mind is an instrument. Don't let it play you.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah.
Yeah. So you play it. So you master it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I have always, from the time I was very little, been able to see and hear people that are crossed over. So that's been my whole
Yeah.
being. So having children, my children as little beings were having the same experiences. So that was when that decision to move into um, this world full time. But eh, just because I was having those experiences didn't mean that I understood everything. There was
Yeah.
still so much learning to do. And when you were talking about someone who passes when they've made choices that um, were not in alignment for them for their growth, not in alignment for
Mhm.
their spiritual growth. I've had sessions with people who, say that they've told their children that their loved one that's died is now their guardian angel. And I always cringe when I hear that, because I'm
Yeah.
like, are you sure you want that family member to be your guardian angel right now?
Yeah.
Like, are you sure about that?
100%. Are they that advanced?
Hmm.
You
And
know?
so a lot of learning, like expanding that um awareness that there's growth and lessons and everything that we do, and that extends when we die, that
Mhm.
those lessons are still there. But another question that I get a lot, well, and they do come into, I mean, uh pets come in all the time. I've had everything from guinea pigs to horses and cats and dogs
That's
come through in spirit
lovely.
for their yeah, for their owners, for their family member when they're having sessions. So that is a question that gets asked, where do they go, and will
Mhm.
they be there when I
Yeah, well, that's
when
so
I go?
lovely. That's so lovely what you do. I'd love to actually talk to you more about that because I'd love to get more of your, experiences and input. So, according to, all of my, research, but not only research, because it sounds something like robotic, but I have
Clinical.
my sensitivities, but obviously, I'm basing the book on research.
Yeah.
Is that when you have domesticated animals with you, right? So you have a dog, a cat, a guinea pig, or something like that, right? What happens is that they are now interacting with a human being or with various human beings, right? So now they are connecting to a species other than their own, which means that now they're not wild beasts, they are not animals in the jungle, they are interacting. And that interaction generates something beyond their instincts. Because remember, their instincts would guide
Right.
them,
Right.
right, to only like be together with their own species and do the things that they had to do. But now you see, Kerrilynn, if you have a dog, right, let's say that the dog has a puppy, right? Maybe that puppy or the mother, they love you more than they love their own species. They're waiting for you to go back home, and they are like crazy for you, and they're so jealous about you. And so you see, wow, this is beyond their instincts, right? So all of these animals, they start developing something that in nature, in the wilderness, amongst their own species, they wouldn't develop. They're developing this sense of connection and these emotions with humans. And obviously you have their energetic centers being expanded because of these, like the heart chakra that we talk about, and even the throat chakra, so they can communicate. So this is being there, like it's exercising when we are interacting with them, it's growing in them, right? And now because of these, they can no longer, let's say, reincarnate in the forest, in the jungle. Now they will be interacting to humans and using that to propel their spiritual growth. And that is helping humans too. So the question that you asked, like, where do they go? There are two questions. If the animals are collective souls, right? Collective souls are insects and very primitive animals who reside in a colony. They are group souls. What are they? They are not spirits, but they behave collectively as one spirit. So their energy that permeates their beings, right, is a very complex sort of energy containing information and data, but they are not spirits. So let's say that you have 100 ants. If one of them dies, that one is not going to reincarnate, right? Now, the energy that was permeating that ant goes back to the group as though that's a soul, right? Eventually, that energy that permeates all of those ants will migrate as the astral body and the etheric body, right? The energy, so to say, to other beings, right? So the data, right? The information is going back to other beings, right? It's not lost. And when you find more complex animals in the wilderness, right? When they die, they go back to reincarnation right after. When we say right after or immediate reincarnation, we don't mean in seconds, but we mean in hours or days. So they go back to reincarnation. And reincarnation is the exact time when the sperm meets the egg, right? Reincarnation is not when they are like
within the
born
same
or...
species.
Sorry?
So within their same species, so that complex animal that's out in the wild, when they die and reincarnate, they're coming back within that same species.
The same species, yeah. At some point, obviously, they will migrate to another species. So after having developed so much and learned so much and polished their instincts, they now are ready to migrate to another type of animal.
What I found interesting in your book, that whole concept of migrating to a different species.
Yeah, it's
I'm still wrapping
fascinating.
my head around it. So I was really excited to have the conversation.
Oh, that's so good. They have
because
this.
sometimes hearing helps me process a little more than just reading. So
Yeah, right. Because I just want to like pass with my own sound words, what it is. So for example, that ant that I was talking about, right, will not reincarnate, but the energy will be back to the group, and eventually that energy will migrate to other ants, and it's going to be like that for a while. And eventually that energy, I'm just calling it energy because it sounds more, kind of okay, I can understand that, right? So it's a complex kind of loose soul, migrates to other ants, and it goes like that, and eventually it starts migrating, right, naturally and continuously to other insects who are more developed or who are now more complex. And it goes like that. When an animal becomes individualized, right, we can say that this animal is a spirit, right? So the animal is an ataman, right? Ataman is just a term that we use to mean that that's a little bit of a tiny piece of God, if you may use this, that detached to seek individuality, right?
Right.
So mammals, for instance, they are individuals, but ants are not, right? The whole group would be individuals. Even if you separate the ants kilometers away, right? The energy won't see a distance, right? It will migrate back to the nearby insects or the most
Right.
similar insects nearby. So distance in this planet is not a deal, really. Um, so the animals in wilderness, like the individualized animals in the jungle, they will reincarnate right after hours. That astral body will connect, right, to other beings of similar species, of the same species, or if they are in time of progressing, another species. So for example, you have some sort of tiger, and then that tiger will eventually become reincarnate in a lion, if the lion's more complex, if you know what I mean, in terms
Yep.
of less instinct and more brain function, etc., etc., etc. When you have these animals at home, right, especially the domesticated ones, right, horses, elephants, so many people in India do have elephants around. So I don't want to make it like, oh, your elephant.
Wow.
Dogs, cats,
Yeah.
etc. As I said, they are developing connection and emotion, so now they cannot just reincarnate, as a bunch of animals reincarnating together, and they cannot just now be away from humans. So when you have a dog and the dog dies, what happens is, for a few weeks, that dog will still remain at home for half of the time. The other half of the time, that's just an estimate. The other half of the time, that dog is going to be sent by benevolent spirits who work in the field. And I probably will do that when I die, hopefully. They bring these dogs to what we call it a spiritual community or a spiritual colony, where so many other of these animals are. They are being taken care of for a while and preparing for a new reincarnation. Why is that dog is still
I've
in that?
seen that. In
Yeah.
in a session, I've seen that, and I said, this is," so they bump up against me, so I feel them physically first, and then I kinda get the gist of how big they are, and then they present to me where I can see what they looked
Wow.
like. And
Wow.
I was sharing with this client that her dog was coming through, and this is what they were showing me. And they'll show me like their view of what their home was with that person, so I know for sure that this
Oh,
animal
wow.
is who they say they are. But
Yeah.
anyway, the dog was running around with a whole bunch of other dogs, and then she felt maybe it wasn't her dog because they didn't have other dogs. And I'm like, "No." It's like one
Yeah.
big dog heaven. They're just, like,
Yeah.
happy and all together. All of these animals are all together. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that was a validation for me when I was, hearing
This is
your point of view about that.
this is one that's beautiful, and that's 100%. So as I said, when they die, right, like we're talking about the first weeks, right,
Mhm.
after death, so they remain at home. So that's why I say, don't move the little bed or their toys, keep them there. It's just because for them, they don't know they died, they don't know that situation, and they're
Mhm.
not suffering. So if they had a newness or something, they are not particularly suffering because they are
Mhm.
not mentally processing that, or they're not attached because they don't even know what happened. So
Yeah.
they're not suffering particularly. So they are half of the time at home and half of the time at that place where they're preparing for a new reincarnation within a new family or even the same family, right? Um, After a while, right, when the dog then gets accustomed to the new place, right, the colony or the community of dogs there, then they don't have to come back anymore. However, they are still accessible, right? So it's
Mhm.
not that like, oh, okay, they're in the community, so they're not here. No, you, for example, as a medium, you can still connect
Yeah.
to the dog there. Eventually the dog will be sent to a reincarnation in a family where the dog has had a bond, or maybe another family to learn something else and progress, or maybe back to your family, your own family. So that's why I say, when you lose a pet, don't feel scared or to suffer again. Oh, I'm not gonna get another dog because I will suffer again. Well, you just maybe like preventing yourself from getting back to your friend.
Yeah.
When that dog reincarnates, right? Even if that dog there, Teddy, let's call it Teddy, even when Teddy, reincarnate in another family, a medium, and now, Kerrilynn, that's what I, saw. A medium can still get in touch with that dog, and the dog will appear as its previous appearance, right? So
Mhm.
that's not lost. So you can still connect, and you're connecting to the very same dog, right? Because it's not lost. Remember, these reincarnations are just personalities of the same spirit.
That's what I wanted to ask. Yeah, it's like part of the collective whole.
Yeah,
Is that is that
definitely.
is that a good way to
Yes,
like?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes. When I said, that we, dogs, animals,
yeah.
people, we are individuals, it means that we are a spirit. We are the ataman, and we have all of these other vehicles,
Mhm.
right, around. So we have, for example, now we have obviously a physical body, but the physical body is a vehicle for the astral body, right? So we can
Mhm.
experience and progress here in the physical plane. And the same thing is the astral body for the mental bodies. So the mental bodies, right,
Mhm.
is experiencing life, if you may, in the astral realm, using the astral body as a vehicle, right?
Right.
But we have the ataman. The ataman is the, let's say, this tiny piece of God, if you may, right? It's what you are, so you don't change that ever.
Right.
So obviously these dogs, right, they are individuals, so they are one spirit, and they having different reincarnations, and in each reincarnation they look different and they have a different name, like us, right? Now I am David. In a previous life I was Mukunda in India. No, that's just not, it's just an example, right? I
Yeah, yeah.
wasn't. But so
Yeah.
that's how things are. So when that dog is already reincarnated, or is still in the community, or is still in the house, the medium can still contact them, can still like visualize, if obviously it's
Yeah.
possible,
And
they can
sometimes
still
clients
see.
are hearing them. Like they'll hear the footsteps or they'll feel like something has laid on the bed with them. So, you know, I always say that's not that is your truth. And so you can own that. And just you don't have to share that with someone who's going to squash that for you.
Absolutely.
You just own what your truth is and
Yeah,
you're having that real experience, which is your truth. And
absolutely.
it's
Absolutely.
interesting. I was teaching a class here in my home over the weekend, and someone looked around in the corner and she asked me, "Did you have a cat die?" And I said, "I didn't have a cat die, but we inherited one." So
Wow.
it was interesting that I had like students here who saw the same cat that we have seen in spirit kind of roaming around this
Wow, yeah, that's, I
house.
mean, yeah, maybe like that's also the, I mean, it could all, I mean, I wasn't there, so I can't say, but it could
Yeah.
either be then the spirit, or it could be maybe the mental
Im Oh, like an
manifestation.
imprint?
Imprints, yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah.
that makes sense too, and I hadn't thought about it that way, but definitely it roams around and let itself be known. Now, what
Yeah.
about clients that have asked, um, who feel that their human loved one that has passed can reincarnate as an animal?
Yeah, so that won't happen. That
I
doesn't happen.
I know, but some people
Yeah.
really want it to happen.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen. So basically, we can't retrograde. We can't go back in
Yeah.
evolution, right? We can be stagnant. We can remain where we are,
Right.
right, for a certain amount of time, but you
Yeah.
cannot go back in evolution, right? So humans will never reincarnate as any animal, right?
Yeah.
And for the other way around, right, an animal reincarnating as human, it is possible. However, it happens.
Just
However,
educate me. I want to hear more about this because
yeah,
I
it's
want
actually
I I I was trying to wrap my head around that, but then when I'm hearing you and it's about the evolution
yeah.
and the more conscious awareness, and I think like if we can segue just a little bit too, it's expanding what I thought I knew about where they go too. It could be an
Mhm.
alternate reality, a different dimension. It's not just one singular place.
Absolutely, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
So, um,
Right, I just put a whole lot on you to have to discuss.
no, no, absolutely not. Look, no, no, no. Look, so animals here on Earth,
Yeah,
right? When we're talking about an animal that is, I mean, animals of any species, they are always progressing to another group, another family of animals, right? So,
right.
for example, that's just an example. This particular shark is across the centuries passing to another group of sharks and then eventually, moving. So all animals will start moving. They never like reincarnating, a billion times in the same species. It doesn't exist, right? It's not like that. Progress happens all the time. um so when you have the most complex animals here of on Earth, complex we mean with intellect or with some sort of line thought that is not that short. So we're talking
Right.
about the domesticated animals, aforementioned, elephants, etc., etc., goats,
Pigs.
pigs. Yeah, they're
Yes.
extremely intelligent and they have a lot of intellect. So they are
Emote.
really, pardon?
They emote, they
Yeah,
show
they
grief
express so
and
much.
yeah, yeah,
They express so much and
yeah.
they are really like on the verge of leaving that kingdom, and they are. So what happens is that eventually they will not be spiritually, right, they will not be fit for a reincarnation in that same species, which is the limit, the maximum, right, here on Earth.
Um,
So, for example, let's just pretend for a second that dogs are the most evolved type of animal here on Earth. Okay, dogs. So, above dogs are humans, right? So, after a period of time, you have that dog who is extremely intelligent, extremely sensitive, extremely intuitive. We see some dogs that you
yeah,
look at them and I'm like, oh my God, you know what I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
like this dog is definitely very intelligent and self-aware. And wow, let's just say that dog now, another incarnation in a physical body of a dog, even of that same species, is not necessary anymore, and it's not going to bring that dog further development, further spiritual growth. So
right.
now that dog, what happens is that, oh, is that dog now going to reincarnate as a human? Not necessarily. So, for example, the dog will go to another planet. When I mean another planet, I don't mean physical planet. The dog will go to another plane. It could be either here, a plane around the Earth,
Yeah,
or another planet, a nearby planet, Venus or Mars. Again, not the physical planet, the astral planet
yeah,
in that location. And then reincarnates there as a more evolved animal, more than what he or she was in here. So they will be a lot more aware and intelligent and self-aware and then they were here. Or they might even go to another planet, again, another place, astral place, where they will reincarnate, not in the physical plane, but in the astral plane. They will reincarnate there as a primitive type of human, right? So when I mean like these other planets, just understand that, in the universe, right, we don't only have planet Earth, right?
Mhm.
And the astral plane of the Earth. We have other ones
Yeah.
happening, right? They are there. We're not just Earth. We have to stop with these. So they might go there and progress in this way, and eventually, after being like a more intelligent and aware animal in Venus, for
Right.
example, right, after a while, that they can then come back to Earth and reincarnate here as humans, as a primitive human. Primitive, I mean, I know the word sounds really bad, but primitive, I mean that in their first reincarnations here as humans, they might just be a miscarriage, and then they will just like die after birth, or they
Mhm.
might even be born with some disability, right? Or they will just, maybe not be so complex because they are just adjusting to a new kind of astral reality, right? And another astral body, another body.
Right.
So animals can reincarnate as humans, yes, but they will first develop themselves elsewhere. You're not going to jump from dog to human, right?
Right.
Like, okay, you died as dog, 10 years later or 20 years later. Oh, that's, that was my dog. This girl was
Yeah.
my dog in previous. No, right? It will take a while, but it
Right.
happens, but it will take a while.
Yeah, I just find that fascinating. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Like, and I watched when I was preparing for our interview today, I had watched you do a talk when you were it was about this, but it was actually about dinosaurs. And I think that's
Oh,
when it was like, oh, that sort of like really was a wow for
yeah.
me. If you
Wow.
would,
Yeah,
do you want to share?
definitely. So
It's
dinosaurs,
the same sort of thing, but you were talking about dinosaurs, and I'm like, of course, then.
yeah, look, the thing about dinosaurs is that, first of all, they were animals,
Yeah,
right? So that's the first thing. They are animals. They were animals. So if they were animals, they were probably spirits, and some of them group spirits. So
yeah,
evolution, and when I mean evolution, I mean spiritual progress occurs for everyone, from the stones, from mineral kingdom to archangels. We are all
yeah.
evolving and we're not stopping,
And that's really
right?
when I was talking about the wow in the book, I think that I had thought of myself in a certain box and realized that I wasn't really fully opening to seeing from a bigger perspective. And really
Mm.
your book pointed out those areas where I needed to look bigger.
Oh, that's so good. I'm so glad
Yeah.
they had a look.
I
So yeah,
interrupted, so sorry.
no, 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 not at all. You are joining in. And yeah, so dinosaurs, they
Mhm.
were animals, so they were progressing spiritually, and I mean they are still, but where are those spirits now? We're talking about, Kerrilynn, six, how many millions of years ago?
Millions, yeah.
66, yeah, like so many millions, so we're talking about a long, long, long time. Those spirits are not stagnant, they're not stuck in time, they have progressed, they are still progressing, right? Those spirits of dinosaurs, they are not on earth anymore, right? They are in a very kind of like high, not high level, but they are mostly, the individuals back then, they are above where we humans are now. Because obviously when there was uh comet or asteroid here
Asteroids.
impacting the earth, and they got instincts, most of them, 90%, they obviously died, and their spirits had to go elsewhere, they weren't just like floating here around the earth for millions and millions and millions of years. They migrated, right? Collectively, all of that, bunch migrated to other
Mhm.
planets to there become their local primitive animals, or that dinosaurs in the other
Right.
planets, right? And then they were developing there. If something happened in that planet, they migrated, they got exiled. They are moving and they are migrating and they are evolving and they are going from species to species, right? And the same way that the evolution of species occur here, right? So you have, when you see a chicken or a bird, you can say, wow, your ancestors back in the days of dinosaurs, they were these dinosaur, right? We always
Yeah.
see these, oh, these are the ancestors of these and that, or the lizard looks like a dinosaur, etc. Well, pretty much like the evolution of species happen, right? The evolution of the spirit happens, right? So that's what I mean. Those spirits there of the dinosaurs,
Right.
they don't look like dinosaurs anymore. They are evolved. They are not like semi-gods, but they are really evolved, most of them, right? um and that's what I want to say. So the animals that are today here, the relatives of those dinosaurs, right? When we see crocodiles and sharks and lizards and birds who had their ancestors as those dinosaurs, they are only related in terms of biology, in terms of DNA. Really, they are not spiritually the same beings. Or does that make sense? So those
Yep.
dinosaurs there, they are not reincarnating as dinosaurs and the same species forever. No, they are migrating, right? Planet
Yeah.
Earth is a school, right? The real world is there. Here it's a
Yeah.
dense physical school, right?
Yeah.
So that's why we
Yeah.
humans and animals come here to learn for a while, or to do and undergo some things for a while, and then we go back there. We only reincarnate here. We only still reincarnate here until we can absorb everything we can and do everything we have to. It's pretty much like school. You're not on the eighth grade forever. Once
Yeah.
that school is done, it's done. You move to uni. You go
Yeah.
and you do your
Yeah.
doctorate, and it goes like that. So yeah, for
And
the dinosaurs.
you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. Like learning can be uncomfortable when you are
Absolutely.
self-reflecting and having accountability. It can be
Yeah,
raw and uncomfortable. But how long do you want to sit in the raw and uncomfortable? So learn it quick.
absolutely.
And
That's
keep moving
1000% true.
forward, right? Like, yeah.
That's so true. I mean, if we see, like, not only for us humans, but if we see that, planet Earth, right, is a school, right, we have to remember that we are still in a very dense physical body, and we are in a
Mhm.
dense world, right? So we are going to experience dense reality, right? So we are dealing with pain, physical pain. I mean, when you get born, it's painful. Sometimes when you die, it's painful. During your life, it's painful. You've got to do things, you've got to eat, you've got to walk. You know what I mean? It's difficult. It is difficult, right? If you compare that to a
Mhm.
spiritual reality where you are liberated in a certain
Mhm.
frequency, right? You can just teleport and you can think telepathically, talk telepathically. I mean, um, and you don't feel pain and you don't age. So see, we are undergoing so much here on this planet. So we have to understand that this is a school. We have to come here. We can have some fun. We can have happy moments. We can,
Yeah.
share love and do all of that. But we have to remember this place here is for my spirit to become better. I'm polishing my spirit. So there will be a little bit of pain, learning,
Mhm.
fixing, right? How to become more benevolent, how to become more spiritual, because it's so easy to be in physical, right? Because you just as we talked earlier, you can just be selfish because it's easier, right? No, get it for me, and what matter is me, myself, and I, right? It's very easy. But being compassionate is difficult. Sharing is difficult. Letting go is difficult, right? So
Forgiveness.
that's what we are doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you are just tuning into our show today, you are listening to Spirit Switchboard on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 New Orleans. And we have David Barreto on the show talking about animal spirituality today. So thank you for being here. There's so much. Originally, um, I had um, surface questions that
Mhm.
that I had when I had originally had reached out to you, and then had the opportunity to read through the book, and then it just shifted in a totally different direction in how
Yeah,
I
we just
thought.
talked so much about everything, right? That
Y-
new thing starts coming up.
Yeah, and there's so many layers to it than just, does my animal go to a heaven place and do they come back? There's so much more to it. One of the
Yeah.
other things, when I was going, I actually have like 4 pages of notes like that are stickied in front of me that we
Mm.
probably are not going to get to all of it today.
Yeah,
But
let's try.
one of the other things that I found, and I don't know why I had, of course, like why wouldn't it have been um, infestations? When we were talking, when I was reading about it, and when I had listened to you talk about it, it made so much sense, because if we walk into a room where somebody has argued, we can feel that energy that's in the room. And if somebody is overthinking and they're frenzied, we can feel all of that energy. And so when you're talking about infestations, whether they're picking up on our thought forms and energy, is that right?
Mhm. Yeah,
Can
yeah, definitely.
I'm like, oh, that just makes so much sense to me. So, can you share the whole backstory to that?
Sure. Absolutely, Kerrilynn. That's so good that you touched on that point, because we have then an opportunity to talk about insects.
Yes,
Um, so
and
the thing is,
accountability again.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Look, the thing is, nature, and when I talk about nature, I'm talking about the physical nature. So I'm talking about really the world, physical, and nature as in etheric nature, or the nature of energies, which is
Mhm.
basically similar to the world here, but in another frequency, right?
Yeah,
Just, kind of, let's just think that all of the atoms are expanded, and
yeah,
thus they are lighter, and right? So it's
yeah,
another frequency. So nature, Kerrilynn, will always um, try to balance out everything, right? So nature will always try to balance out everything. So if we have some species in the wilderness, or if we have a colony of ants, or if we have a tree falling down, nature will balance out that unbalance. Okay, so we have to think this way first, right?
yeah,
So let's say that you go to the middle of the woods, right? And you start imprinting your thoughts there, right? Because we think we physically we can't see it, but in the astral realm we can, or not even the astral realm, you can see the
mhm,
influence of your thoughts and your emotions. They are not just around your aura; they are influencing the space around you, and they getting imprints around you, right? When we think, when we feel, it's there. It's not a mystical idea. You are actually generating that, right? The little images, they are getting imprint, and that physical area is becoming similar to what your thoughts are projecting, right? So let's say that your thoughts are projecting a cinnamon smell, which is really favorable, right? Your walls, let's just understand this way. Your walls eventually will start smelling like cinnamon. That's what I mean. The little cinnamons here around, that's how energy will imprint on things. And you can see after a while, you can see the cinnamon and the smell and a cake with cinnamon on the top, etc. So let's say that you are in your bungalow or in your house, right? And you see spiders coming in or any other type of insects coming in, right? Obviously, those insects are there to balance out the place, not because you are there or because you are projecting thoughts. It's because, well, they are there where they live and they will try to go there and live their lives and eat and dwell and do all of that. Now when you are at home, right, so you are far from the wilderness where there's no physical reasons why the spiders or the whatever insects will enter your house. Obviously they can still enter your house, but we're talking about a infestation. We're not talking about one ant or one spider or 3 mosquitoes, right? We're talking about infestation. What happens is, because you are imprinting that particular thought in there, those insects there, they will be attracted to the house or to the flat, to your apartment, to balance out as though they are in nature, because they don't see a difference between I am in the jungle and I am in the big city. I am in the forest, I am in an apartment, right? For them, obviously, unconsciously, right? They are just balancing out, and nature is bringing me here. I am bringing myself here with my group. So if you are, let me just make it quicker. If you are at home and you are not studying, if you are not thinking, right? If your thoughts are stagnant, if your thoughts are not producing anything and they are repetitive, spiders will be attracted, and then you're going to see spiders and spider webs all over the place after a while. Why? Because spiders, they have these, let's call it energy again. They have this energy of labor, but it's a labor that requires intellect. They do not have intellect. They have instinct. But remember that instinct is an intelligent mechanism, right? So they don't have to think to have that instinct, but instinct is intelligence. So they are adding to that place lacking mental labor. They are adding their work there to balance out. Obviously, for the spider's not doing that to help you or to balance out anything. For the spider, they're doing that because they want to catch mosquitoes and other bugs, right? And they're doing what they are told by their instincts. But we are talking about metaphysics here, and metaphysics is the reason behind everything, the primal reason. So if you have an infestation of spiders, we can always find physical reasons. Well, because you have holes on the wall, and because you live nearby these trees where many spiders live, or because of this and that. That's okay. That's the physical reasons, and they are true, right? I agree with them. But why are you in that particular house? Why do you live there, and why you don't live elsewhere? Why those spiders entered your house now and not 2 months ago? We start like investigating the whys, right? The primal reason that generated the encounter of you and the infestation. So those spiders, they are there donating, right, their energy of mental labor to your house, because you are not doing that. When you have ants infesting your place, right, and you clean your kitchen and you don't leave food crumbles on the floor, and it's so annoying, and you have so many ants and you don't understand why. Ants, they ooze this energy of sweetness, right? They're very sweet, they're very kind. Obviously, we are not talking about them deliberately. So it's not that they mean to be kind. Actually, they will bite you, right? They will sting you or whatever they do. But what I mean is that the essence, right, the energy permeating them is very similar to the energy of that we link to kindness and being sweet, right? So when you have a lot of
Community.
ants in your kitchen or in your house, it's because that place lacks sweetness. It lacks the joy of being sweet, being really kind, right? Being really graceful, right? So then you can find, physical reasons for the ants to be there. You're like, okay, it's because, we are eating food and sugar. Why are you eating so much sugar? Maybe you are lacking sweetness, you know what I mean? And you have to compensate. So those ants are being attracted there, obviously, to do their jobs. But in terms of metaphysics, they are going there to balance out. So your kitchen was lacking lots of sweetness, and they are bringing the sweetness back, right?
Mhm.
Once you bring sweetness back to the kitchen or to the family, to the house, they will go away. Why? Because that's going to be too sweet for them. They don't have to balance out anymore. Nature won't have to send them there anymore. How do you make a kitchen a sweeter place? You have to start doing things that make you really happy there. You have to
Mhm.
decorate your kitchen, and I mean, just like, putting a plant there, a nice picture, a colorful picture, candles, or something that makes you feel like, wow, I love this place. And and I have a good conversation in here. Whenever I'm in the kitchen with my
Mhm.
daughter, I talk to her and we hug or whatever. See, you are donating so much sweetness to that kitchen that
Yeah.
the kitchen will become sweet. And that's true for the whole house and for the whole thing of infestation with ants. They will donate sweetness because that's lacking sweetness.
Right.
And there are so, do you know what, Kerrilynn? Let me tell you that last night, I in the evening, I had some sort of an argument yesterday, right? Not an argument, but something kind of like, I had a conversation that wasn't very pleasant, right?
Right.
Can you believe that yesterday, I swear to you, I dreamt of bed bugs? And I was like, oh, there's bed bugs in this bedroom, and I have to throw this very sofa away. I mean, and they were biting my legs, and I was really scratching my legs, and I really thought during the night that I was going to wake up with bed bugs, and my legs were scratching. So you see, the bed bugs, right? Bed bugs specifically, they occur when you are having a conflict in that place. You're having a conflict with
Mm.
someone else, but you don't want to say, right? You don't want to, there's a conflict, but you don't want to confront because that confrontation will lead to something worse. So you have
Right.
to endure there. Yeah, exactly. You have to endure. So bed bugs will lead to that, right? Termites as well, they will, when you have them, right? Those little things eating your wood, right? Eating the cupboard and things. That is a sign that something is deteriorating, right? So some things needs
Mm.
to change, right? So you need to change emotionally. So there are emotions and residues of emotions within you that they are deteriorating, right?
Right.
Memories. So you have to kind of like clean all, develop all. It's hard to say, because when we don't know the person in particular, right? I can't just generically say, oh, you have to do this, right? You have to talk to the person and know that exact problem. But all in all, insects, they will balance out whatever. So if there's lacking in energy or if there's too much of certain energy, they will come to balance out. So you assess that, change the emotion, and they will go away. Obviously, you're going to do the physical part as well. You're gonna cover the holes, in your wall. You're
Yeah.
gonna clean the floor. You're gonna do the whole thing that you need to. I wouldn't particularly um be so violent in killing them all. Obviously, I'm not saying that if you kill an ant, that's karmic and you're gonna, no, but I think that if you treat that message and that energy with violence, you are not fixing anything. You have to fix
Mhm.
yourself first and do the other measures, as opposed to okay, that's a battle then. You know what I mean? That's not going to fix. It will fix temporarily, right? Like, but then it won't fix. So use those insects
Yeah.
as an opportunity. If there's an infestation here, why?
So if that came to you in a dream, is it like a spirit animal knowing what you are needing as far as a message? Is it your divine team connecting in with the spirit of that insect knowing what you're needing? How does
Mm.
that
Because
like,
of
or
my
the difference
definitely,
between
that's a
yeah.
great question. Look, because of my perception of bed bugs, right? Because I had this knowledge, or this
Yeah.
idea about bed bugs, when I dreamed, today I had, obviously this is another conversation again, but there are many types of dreams. There are the dreams, there are astral dreams, which are when you detach from your body, when you
Mhm.
sleep, fall asleep, you may experience things in the astral realm, and then when you come back, you might still like recollect some things. So this is an astral dream. You are actually remembering something. And there are the dreams that are just, let's say, mental burps, right? So for example, you see too much of a movie, or you got impressed by the movie, you're gonna dream about the movie. And it's
Right.
just the brain really kind of cleansing, kind of. And there are the dreams that are kind of the mix of them, and they are just like, remember that we have an aura, right? Obviously, but then when we are thinking, we are not just thinking inside the skull, right? The
Yeah.
images are here as well, and we are projecting. So I dreamt with this sort of, oh, I had an argument, or some sort of like not pleasant conversation, and they were here. And then I connected unconsciously, I connected that to what does this cause, right? So before attracting bad bugs, that there was a message from my own perception. So when I went to bed, I had my astral endeavors, and I dreamt of other things. But then when I was dreaming that I had bed bugs, I was on my own bed in my own room. So does that make sense? So I
Yep.
wasn't elsewhere. I was exactly where I was, but thinking and even scratching my, and like literally like thinking, oh my god, I can't believe I have bed bugs in here. And so see, there was an association. So that
Right.
association wasn't from like elementals or spirits of nature or other
Right.
animals. It was me projecting a meaning for my arguments last night, and it was so spot on, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
but now everything's okay, everything's good, but
Good.
yesterday night it wasn't. So, I mean, it was okay, but not okay enough. If I was to sustain that pattern, we would probably have generated some sort of, not infestation, but we would
Yeah.
see insects around.
Yeah. And it's giving you an opportunity to look at, um, where in the past did you not want to have a conversation that was uncomfortable or felt like confrontation, and those steps and moving through it, right? Like,
1000%. You
yeah.
just look around, Kerrilynn, you just look around and it's there, right?
Yeah.
And you might see, wow, is this a sign, or is this something telling me something? When we talk
Yeah.
about this, Kerrilynn, now, is this a sign? Is there a sign? We sound so mystical, but it's not. It's not
Mhm.
mysticism, it's not magic. It's just like, look, I know the physical world, right? I know how the physical world works, right? I know all of these, biology, chemistry, physics, but there are reasons
Yeah.
behind all of these. The primal reason, right, is the first why, right? The first why generates, and then the physical world reproduces that, right? So when I say look around, see the message, I'm not saying look around and see the physical. I'm like,
Yeah.
look around and see the reason why the physical emerged that way.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about spirit animals or
Mm-hmm.
spirit guides. Like, it came up a couple of different ways. Like if a deer jumps out in front and you hit the deer and the deer dies, is that
Oh.
uh, is that the deer giving you a message, and is there the um, subconscious contract
Right.
between
So
the
is
two
this in the physical world? So
in the
actually,
physical? Yeah,
oh, okay,
actual
right.
jumps out
S-
in front, like, so that happened to somebody, and they asked me what my thoughts were, and I'm like, this is what, on the woo woo level, this is how I feel. This is what this is potentially about, but you need to sit and feel it out and see if that feels
Yeah,
like a truthful answer to you. But I would love your
definitely.
thoughts.
Well, the thing is, it depends on, obviously who experienced that. Because, for example, for a person who is completely, let's say, I wouldn't say disconnected, but a person who wouldn't care much, like, okay, that happened, that,
Disconnected is still a good word.
it's a good word,
Not,
isn't it?
yep, it is. Not as
It does.
consciously aware.
Yeah, and if they do that, so that there's no message for them, obviously that is
Mhm.
something that happened, and they will eventually encounter their thought again. They will encounter their memory again, and they
Yeah.
will rethink that. But for a person who would be actually feeling upset, and,
Mm.
well, actually this caused something on me, and, this is really uncomfortable, I'm really sad, and etc, etc, etc. There is a message. Obviously each person sees a deer differently. One
Mhm.
thing is you running over an animal. Another thing is you running over an animal that means something to me, or the animal that I
Yeah.
perceive as something, like I think this about this animal. So, for example, oh, I studied, or I really like totems, and all
Yeah.
of the animals, etc. Yeah, the symbolism and the archetypes. So knowing their archetype, right? Knowing that the deer means this, or the turtle means that, and then something happens to me involving those animals, then the message is quite clear. So, what I would suggest to the person is, what do you think before the accident happened? What were your thoughts? What do you think? What did you think then of deers in terms of spiritual meaning? What do they mean to you? I mean, right? And
Mhm.
then obviously when you are in an accident is when the structure of something, the structure, right, is not good, right? So for example, when you break a bone in your body, right, it's because the structure is not okay. The structure is the founding base for anything, right? So for example, if you break your leg, I don't mean the thigh, I don't mean the foot, I mean the leg. When you break your leg, is because your future plans, the base for your future plans, you're not building them well. So if you are not building that well, in the future they will collapse, just like your leg is collapsing now. Your foot, if you break your foot, then it's exactly where you are going right now. And if you break your
Mhm.
foot, it's like somebody's diverting you. If it's the leg foot, it might be a man, or a young energy, and a yin energy if it's on the right foot. Obviously there's a whole study on the
Yes.
metaphysics, right,
Yeah.
of the body.
Yeah.
So when you have an accident where there's a shock or a collapse, we are talking about the structure. So the person unconsciously wanted to crash something. The person wanted to make some sort of structure collapse because the person wanted change on something, right?
Mhm.
And that thing is exactly what the deer represents to them. So if the
Yeah.
deer represents new beginnings with something, right? Okay, new beginnings in studying, right?
Right.
If that's
Right.
what it did, is for the person, then that crash is like the person unconsciously don't want to do those studies, don't want to endeavor in those new studies unconsciously, because consciously we want some things, but unconsciously we don't. So many
Yeah.
people, Kerrilynn, who wants to be really rich, right? And they here on planet Earth, right, awake, they are playing the lottery and they try to be rich, but when they fall asleep, they beg their spiritual guides not to allow them to make any money, because they want to grow spiritually, and they know that money in this moment, in this lifetime, will not help them. So sometimes that we want something so much and it's not happening, it's because
Yeah.
we actually don't want that, but we believe blindly that we do,
Yeah.
and that's why, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I was thinking about my son. Um, uh, he's a grown man now. My son is a grown man now, but when he's in the autism spectrum, does beautiful, having a wonderful life, building a beautiful life for himself. And when he was younger, he was nonverbal till over 3. He was nonverbal
Wow.
till he was over 3. And then when he started talking, he was telling you how your kidneys function and why the Titanic sunk. And he just went from not speaking to an encyclopedia. And
Wow.
right. And we were in an environment that was volatile and scary, walking on eggshells. And so one of the ahas that I had when I was reading and preparing for this was whales. I saw your post about whales and it clicked. My son during that time period was hyper focused on blue whales in particular, on blue whales, and he wanted to listen to the sound of blue whales all
Wow.
the time during that time period. And when we removed ourselves, when I removed myself and children from that situation, and it shifted. He didn't have that fascination with blue whales anymore and went to tree frogs.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so today I was like, oh my goodness, like, because I wasn't looking from a spiritual perspective at that time. I was just we were all in survival mode really at that point in time, but it was also um understanding my son, having different ways of communicating with him as well too within the autism spectrum, which really pushes your self-awareness and conscious awareness when you are
Hmm.
communicating on a different level with nonverbal people. And
Yeah.
yeah, so if you could talk a little bit about um why that would be important, what that aha actually was all about,
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's so fascinating, honestly.
isn't it?
The thing,
Like just the animals themselves that he was focused in and where we were and what was happening. And now
yeah.
looking back on it is
Yeah. So look, obviously,
big.
when I talk about animals and what they can help us, or what do they represent, or
Mhm,
um obviously I can give a generic kind of explanation, but each case is a different case, because for
mhm,
each person they had a different life in a particular past, and they have a different present, so obviously it depends on person to person. But what I can say to you is that whales, they represent, and when I mean represent, I don't mean about human symbolism. Oh, they represent because we think this way. No, the
mhm,
sounds of whales, they resonate, right? They are similar to what the motherly sound sounds to someone. I'm not saying that whales that make the same sound as mothers do verbally. I mean that sound of whales triggers inside of you parts of your unconscious mind that has to do with a caring mother, right? It's
nurturing.
just because I'm
Yeah.
trying to translate sound to feeling, right? So that sound translates to this feeling here.
Mhm,
So when you hear, you play sounds of whales, right? That is, you don't know, right? Physically you don't know, but inside of you that is triggering something related to taking care of, somebody's taking care of me, or
mhm,
I am protected, or there's a big mother figure, not necessarily my current mother, but there is some protective figure. There is something in here, and because the person feels so protected, so looked after, they then can, oh, I can actually open up a little bit. Maybe that was the case. I know that
Mhm.
that whales, they dissolve traumas,
Mhm.
right? The sounds of them, they dissolve traumas. And obviously, we're not talking about only traumas of this life. We're talking about
Mhm.
traumas of previous lives, because we are coming back with them
Yeah,
to
and what's
sort them out.
interesting is he would talk about past lives. When he started
Really?
talking, it was, truly fascinating, and one of the things that he had said was that it was not to be sad when he died, because he was going to go back to where, he had come from before, and he did say God,
Um,
and I didn't take them to church, so this was,
yeah,
just
wow.
from him, and he was 4 at the time, and he said, my brother and I, when we were in heaven, we chose to be brothers in this lifetime to help you learn to be more patient. We were friends there, but we chose to be brothers here so we could help you here.
Wow. So this other brother is older than him.
Nope, younger.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
15
That's
months.
incredible.
The boys are 15 months apart.
And when it comes from a child, right, where you never told them anything like that, like
Nothing.
you don't
And
have an
I
option.
no, I was cutting hair back then too. I wasn't even doing this work full time. It was
Yeah,
because they were having these experiences and talking about it, and I did as a child too, that I decided to come out and
of course. That's the
do the work and be more consciously aware so that they could also do what they needed to do here too.
that's
But it
fantastic. That's
right.
wow, wow. That's a big story. That's a big
It's a big
thing.
story. Yeah,
And
but that
they
the animals he chose, because when I looked up even tree frogs, to understand that message from tree frogs is being on the right path, and this is successful in where you're going, and, it was just very fascinating when you allow yourself to look into it. You don't necessarily have to be a shaman to be aware and to research into it.
absolutely, you don't have to. You just have to, I mean, maybe you can go and, collect some information, experience something, and
Mhm.
then observe more and feel more
Yeah.
open and be like, is this a message? It's not that you're going to be crazy
No.
around, oh, is this a message? Is there a message? Is this? No, you're
No.
not going to be like that. But when it's there, when it's obvious, like you
Yeah.
knew it.
And that's what I tell clients as well too. Like, not every cardinal you see is going to be your loved ones on the other side, but when it's weird, when it's doing something that is out of the ordinary and out of
Yeah,
context, then for sure. And you can correct me if I've been, not saying it, if I've been misleading clients, if you can correct me, but that's how I've always
now
seen
that
it.
you are absolutely right, you are absolutely right. It won't be, always, but I think that when it's there, obvious to you, and when it's
Mhm.
so obvious, that's why I say, for example, when you see like a sparrow or canary, or something like, a bird, that could be a spiritual message, but 99% of the times they won't be. It's just the
Mhm.
animal really, residing in nature. But obviously, if you are about to take a decision, right, and then a sparrow lands near your set of keys, that's
Mhm.
obvious, right? What you have to do, you got the key.
Yeah.
So, so that's what I mean. It's when you ask something, but not directly to nature, but, you are there and you are open and you are visualizing everything around you, and then something happens, then that's the message, right? Let me just add a little bit about whales, because they are so fascinating. Do you know,
Mhm.
Kerrilynn, that that's something I was able to fully study, and see and all of that. And the astral realm, I say astral realm is just like the astral layer right above here, the physical planet, right? Some spiritual guides, they take some people who have recently died, sometimes due to suicide, right? And they take them to platforms, to astral platforms in the sea, where whales are jumping and singing,
Oh,
right?
that's
And then they bring
fascinating.
them there right? And they are fully asleep, because not asleep, but they are unconscious completely. And they
Mhm.
bring them there for the sounds of the physical wails, right? To help them heal some traumas so they can emerge back and then experience what they have to experience due to what they done to themselves, which is another story.
Yep.
But spirits guides, they are helping recently deceased people with whale sounds and even dolphin sounds as well. So yeah, that's very, like, so again, it's about dissolving traumas, right?
Yeah.
The other animals that you mentioned, see, there was a step by step, so your son started with the whale and then the tree frogs, right? So see,
Mhm.
which means that the whales, the sounds, they are not needed anymore, because now those rusty traumas may not be there anymore. So I can open up, which means I can now speak up. I don't know, I'm not
Yeah, it
studying
just
your
was
case, but
fascinating to look back and reflect on it, and the timing and the hyper focused and the interest in the animals that they were, and putting it together. You know, it
definitely, yeah,
feels like
sometimes
it's in the right.
sometimes it's the association that we do, but sometimes
Yeah.
depending on what, I'll tell you, the type of people who will get the messages from animals, or spiritual animals,
Right.
more than any other, is this: if your culture, or if your um beliefs, your main beliefs are feminism, or anything relating to spirit, animals, and animal spirit guides and totems and things like that, when you need to have a some sort of information, your spirit guide, which is a probably human or human like, will generate their thought form and show you somehow,
Mhm.
right? So I'm not talking about seeing physical animals, I'm talking about in being like a clairvoyant, or in your dreams, or in your astral perception, right? Or
Right.
in your tuning, you might see, let's say, owls, right? If owls symbolize something for you, right, and they mean so much to you in that particular sense,
Like my.
your oh yeah, I can see one in there now, yeah. So if they mean
Yeah.
something to you,
Yeah.
in a particular sense, your spirit guides may fabricate a thought form, right? So an image of that owl, of owls, right? Or if you dream, or if you see an eagle, it might also be this, a fabrication of that. Why? Because
Mhm.
you are receptive to that message,
Yeah.
right?
For me, it's
Some other
skunks.
pardon?
Skunks.
Yeah,
Small but commanding respect.
exactly. And
Yeah.
also, yeah, now that you said something about skanks, like skanks, they really, I wouldn't say, I mean, all animals are fascinating, but
Yep.
skanks, they have to do with, if you want to keep someone away,
Yes.
right? And like, they're there, so you might see that. So not always will those animals be really real animal
Right.
spirits. Some animals, they work in the spiritual realm with other people. They work with them, as in they are with them. But I'd say that most animals that we see, in terms of symbology, right, in terms of, wow, I had an astral projection and I saw this animal, or I dreamt of this animal, or I saw these,
Like power
most of
animals.
them, yeah, sorry,
Like, are power animals a separate thing?
they are, they
Mm.
are, they
Sorry that
are
I.
these. Yeah, so for example, back in the day, right, the communities, especially North America, right, but obviously I'm talking about any other part of the world that had, same system or similar. You had a whole community, right, where there was an animal that was a symbol for that community, or maybe other animals who were the symbol of something that that community pursued for a particular time. So, for example, if a rabbit is their symbol, is the main animal, is because their community is committed to uh, being agile and happy and produce food. It depends on their needs, right? So it's their symbol. Sometimes if there's a battle with another tribe, right, or something like that, they will embody another animal, right, to give them what they need in that time. So those thoughts of them are collectively generating the archetype of a particular, like a wolf, let's say. And
Right.
that wolf, which is magnetized by their thoughts collectively, influences them to absorb the characteristics of the wolf, or what they believe the
Right.
characteristics are. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep. It does make
So
sense.
so obviously they are creating these. Some other wolves may join in, as in because they are, like attracts like. So some other wolves, as in spiritual, may come and be around, right? Some spirit guides might actually bring some wolves, etc., if that will help the community. But for people who are not in the community, or they're not in these days, because the world now has changed dramatically, right? So we don't find communities like that anymore. It would be pretty much the same thing. So if you put in your minds that butterflies is all about change and happiness and all of that, you are embodying the archetype of the butterfly. So you have a picture of a butterfly, and you have a tattoo of a butterfly, and you love butterflies. Then you are creating that holographic butterfly,
Right.
right? That is influencing back to you the same things that you send to this artificial butterfly, right? So obviously you will encounter butterflies. So when you go out and you do something, and some butterflies, some physical butterflies, they start behaving strangely, it's because your holographic butterfly is influencing those butterflies, and they are resonant because they see each other as similar, and your butterfly influences those real butterflies. And
Right.
that's how you see physical animals sometimes doing something. Not always this will happen, okay? It has to be extremely obvious. Oh, I saw a butterfly, it means change. No, I mean, it depends, right? Like, let's be more down to earth in these terms. And
Yep.
that's how you do. You may also have, as I said, your spirit guide fabricating that for you. But if you don't believe in, animal or messages from animals, your spirit guide will produce some sort of different information for you, not related to animals, but they will maybe get a person who's quite sensitive, and they will inspire that person to tell you something. So that's the
Right.
message. So, it depends on you. What do you believe? What are you open to? Understand, and that's what is going to be produced for you. But you can produce your own.
Right. I just want to be mindful of our time, and I know that we're getting close to having to wind down. So I just wanted to make sure that we had that opportunity to discuss, which I know that's going to be short now, but um, something that is near and dear, and that you're quite passionate about, is really educating and um, educating people regarding their consumption of meat and how that affects you on a vibrational level.
Mm. Obviously, Kerrilynn, this is such a sensitive topic, not for
It
me,
is very
but
sensitive.
it's very sensitive, because humans, and I include myself in this, right?
Yeah.
Humans, um, they are. You can't tell them that they're not doing the right thing. They always, and I am in this group, they always
Mhm.
want to be like, oh yeah, you're doing really well, yes, you are progressing, yes, when dying you're gonna meet Buddha, Jesus, and Krishna, right? Like, nobody wants to hear that they are doing something that is not good, right? No, you are wrong. Nobody wants to hear that. It's
Mhm.
not that I have the knowledge or the right to say that people are wrong, but the point here is not people. The point are the animals, right? animals are spirits, right? And we humans, we have the capability of distinguishing what is right and what is wrong. We are not here based on instincts anymore. We are not like, those primitive
Yeah.
subhumans, right? So because we have these, we have to take the responsibility to say, look, this type of um, diet or animal exploitation is not something that goes together with moral development. We are creating a world that is technologically advanced, but morally we are so low, right? So when we talk about eating meat, it's not about the meat only. It's about like not being compassionate and saying that you prefer that piece of meat than the animal being alive. The thing is, when you eat meat, right? This is one of the things I could see. When you eat meat, right? Your physical body is eating the physical meat, but your energetic body is eating the energetic side of the meat. That meat was obviously from an animal that was slaughtered. And even if the animal didn't suffer during death, the animal didn't want to die. The animal wasn't particularly emotionally feeling good, and the animal was kept somewhere during life. So the energy, right? And again, I use the term energy because it makes like simpler for us to use, but I'm talking about the etheric components of that
Yeah.
etheric body. They get obviously poisoned by their emotions and their thoughts and by their sadness and everything in between. When you get that pieces of meat, again, you can't see that as in if you only see physically, but the energetic imprint is still in there. So you are eating that and you are absorbing that to your own aura. I'm not saying that if you eat a piece of meat, you are going to instantly become sad and desperate or anything, but that is building up, right? That is building up, and you are building these in you, and it's just so dense, right? If you go to a slaughterhouse, right? If you are a clairvoyant or a sensitive and you can see what's happening around, right? Not in the physical world, it's diabolical. It's so bad. Not only you see all the desperation and the whole thing going on, but you see spirits there of people who are absorbing that energy. They are absorbing those energies. They are there actually having fun on that. They are obviously spirits of people who are, they've got distorted minds, and they are, maybe criminals, and those nefarious, bless their souls, but they are in a moment they are not well. So they are in these places, and you find this type of spirits in brothels, in skid rows, right, and in slaughterhouses, and in anywhere where there's a lot of malice,
Desperation. Mhm.
desperation, going on, etc. So they are there obviously feeding on their energy. Why they are feeding on their energy? It's because those spirits, obviously, they are not physical, and they are not in the physical world. The etheric energy of the animals, they are semi-physical, right? So they are too subtle to be considered physical, but they're too dense to be considered spiritual. So
Right.
when those spirits absorb their energy, the etheric energy, they then experience some sort of physical senses again, right? And then they can do more here on the
Right.
physical world. They can interfere more, right? Because then they have more semi-physical power, so they can almost touch, not touch, but the the
Influence
the,
in a
the
way.
corridor in between
Yeah.
physical and spiritual becomes shorter, because then they are with this physical semi-physical energy. So they're actually taking advantage of these slaughterhouses, and they're taking advantage of people in addiction, and and people who are really 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 mean. When you think something too much, they are feeding on that, and then they connect to you, and then they can influence you. But they're all doing that for absorbing energy. In this planet here, our currency is money, right? In the astral realm, the currency is semi-physical energy,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that's why we have to become better people, so we don't have them around. And like these which they are our brothers and sisters really, but at the moment they are really not doing well. So eating meat, you are not only promoting this horrible suffering of these animals in the physical world, but also in the astral world, and you are giving more energy to these nefarious spirits for them to interfere on earth, and they are causing wars and diseases and everything that we see, all the chaos, right? Most of it
Yeah.
is like half of it is produced by us directly, and the other half is by them, right? Who
Yeah.
are discarnate, and they are still trying to revenge and to do something. And as I said again, repeating myself, when you eat meat, you are eating the energy as well. You're not only eating the physical meat, you're eating
Yeah.
the energetic meat. So we should see that.
This has been a pleasure. This has gone by so quickly, and I think there's so many things
Yeah,
that we didn't get to talk about. Maybe we could revisit, have you back on, and continue the conversation another time. Could you let people
100%.
know where to? You have two books,
Yeah.
where they could
So
get those?
yeah, so my first book is called The Supernatural Science, Theory and Magic. In that book, I talk about ghosts, I talk about witchcraft
Yeah,
spells, and I talk about oracles and angels, everything in a scientific perspective. So I give a scientific explanation. When I mean scientific, I don't mean scientific method. I'm meaning scientific thought. So I explain in a way that doesn't sound esoteric or religious. So this book is fantastic. You can find this book literally everywhere: Barnes and Noble,
yeah,
Waterstones, all of the main stores, really online. Amazon, eBay, everywhere. Right? The Supernatural Science by David Barreto, and my second book is now out there
yeah.
in the same
September
shop.
7th, was it released September 7th?
It was, yeah, on the
Yeah,
4th, I guess.
September 4th, beginning of this past
Or
September,
5th.
this month.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
like this. Yeah, because
yeah,
we have audiobook and we have ebook and we have
yeah.
paperback.
Brilliant.
So obviously each of them were released on a different date. The
Highly
new book is
recommend
called,
it.
thank you so much, Kerrilynn. So the book is called Karma and Reincarnation in the Animal Kingdom: The Spiritual Origin of Species. And in the book, I talk about obviously all of the karma and reincarnation in the animal kingdom. But I also talk about some sort of peculiar things regarding the spirits of animals and meat, and I also touch a lot about on history and anthropology, so we can understand quite a few
Yeah.
things.
And
And I
astrology.
just want, yeah, and astrology. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
at the end of the book, I talk about the astrological ages. So I talk about the age of Aries, Taurus, Gemini,
Yeah.
Leo, I guess, Cancer, Aquarius, Pisces. And I talk about even veganism, in the book, and how the new age of Aquarius, where we're going to enter in the next century, how that is going to shape this world and how veganism
Yeah.
plays a role in that. So yeah, the book is called Karma and Reincarnation in the Animal Kingdom, and you can find it everywhere: Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, Amazon, eBay, everywhere, and on innertraditions.com. It's where they are selling the book as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here, David. So
Thank you,
thank you so
Kerrilynn.
much to the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network 105.3 and 107.7. Next week, we will be having Marie D. Jones on talking about the afterlife, and she will also be talking about her book, Celebrity Hauntings. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.